would love to welcome the wonderful Rebecca to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So good to be here, Karleigh.
I'm so flippin' stoked. We hooked up on Instagram. Bad way to put it. You know what I mean. And I realized so early on that we have a very similar story and very similar passions. So I would just love to have you just tell everyone who you are, what you do, and why we connected.
Yeah, you bet. So I've been working with women for about 10 years, ever since my first divorce, because I'm one of those that's got the double divorce, but working with women to help them take the next steps in rebuilding their life after divorce, particularly after traumatic divorce or after traumatic marriages. So I've spent about more than 10 years now. It's been 13 years. 13 years helping women take those next steps and really identifying what it is that they want to do. They're now newly free. They have this ability to choose. The world is wide open. And often they have zero ideas to what the heck that even means. And so where does that lead? Right back into the next toxic relationship, right? Right here. That's what I did.
Yep.
I thought I was so healed up. I took 4 years in between major relationships and ended up repeating exactly the same thing. So I've kind of parlayed that decade plus of experience into a new platform of helping to break those patterns so that instead of just rebuilding your life, you're building a better life where you're not going to keep repeating those patterns and you get to build what you actually want in the world.
I love that. And two, I say I totally could have used you like when I got, because I'm married and divorced. Yeah. Been there, done that. But I honestly probably would have been so awful. I was so closed off and so angry and so bitter and convinced that it was everyone else's fault. So actually, this is totally off the cuff. And if you don't want to go here, that's totally fine. But I have noticed, like for me, I was incredibly angry, bitter, super toxic. I was a victim. The whole world was out to get me. How do you just kind of, oh, that's such a bad way to put it. But like, do you wait for women to like be ready to come to you? Or do you start, like, how do you work with women like prior healing Karleigh?
Right. So in a multitude of ways, right? So first off, I totally relate. After my first divorce, that's exactly where I was. I was the victim. He was the problem. It couldn't have been me, right? Like I was doing all of the things right. And so when I found myself in the second situation that was like identical, I'm like, maybe it's me. And like not in that victim-y way, because of course I went there first too, of like, well, maybe it is me and like I'm the problem and all of these crazy things, which is what started me on that road of self-development, right? Because I wanted to fix me. I was like, if I'm the problem, I don't want to be toxic. I don't want to be manipulative. I don't want to be all these crazy things that I'm being accused of being. Functional psychopath, that's my favorite. I did not want to be those things. And so I got to dive right into like learning about things like codependency and gaslighting and triangulation and all of these things. And I'm like, oh, that's what I was living. I didn't even know there were words for that or explanations for that or anything. So that's where my passion lies not in doing that education, because folks like you are fabulous at it. And so I refer. If you want to learn about narcissism and gaslighting, I got you, girl. But in really helping to break those patterns within ourselves. Like if we want to learn about who we are and what does that look like to be a codependent? What does that look like to break those patterns of looking for validation from somebody else and then being broken when they stop giving it to us? And when it turns into abuse, because that's the cycle. We know that, right? It's just what happens. So I find women in lots of ways. Now with this new platform, I find people through my website. They just find me somehow through the miracles of Google. I don't know how that works. I find people through talking with them on Instagram, or rather they find me. I haven't done a whole lot of marketing. I do one-on-one private coaching, but also in my regular career that I started right after my first divorce was right with a displaced homemaker program. And so that's where I learned the passion of, I want to help people. I want to help people like me, because I found that program by pure luck I was in the wrong place at the right time and walked out with just amazing resources that could only be divinely aligned, and have led me to where I'm at now. But I got to spend those 10 years really just helping women take those next steps and identifying, doing that. It's called motivational interviewing in my career world. Helping them figure out what it is that they want to do and supporting, rather than telling them what to do. It's helping them find what they want to do themselves. So now just taking it that next step level of just going further and deeper and building a life they love.
So y'all didn't see it off camera, but I definitely had a moment where I got way too excited when she mentioned motivational interviewing, because this is a skill that I am actively working on applying. So my mom was going to school to be a social worker, and so she got all these really cool books, and she got this book that was titled Motivational Interviewing, and I started going through it, and I was having light bulb moment after light bulb moment, and I was like, oh my gosh, the whole concept of change talk, by the way, I've done a podcast episode on it, I'll link it in the show notes. Wait, I don't get on a rant here, but it was so mind-blowing to me. And just as like an overview, and Rebecca, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm a total newbie at this, but motivational interviewing in a sense is getting to the root of, just like she said, of what they want to do when they're ready, versus being like, no, you need to do this. I enjoy my tough love approach, but I also realize I need some more of that. So the thing that blew my mind when it comes to motivational interviewing is how it ties excuse me, so closely into abuse recovery, and just kind of the base, like some of the things we talk about, because if you're not ready and you're not open to it, there's nothing really that can be done. Like, you can lead a horse to water all you want, or even yourself. Like for me, I didn't realize I wasn't ready for about a year, like after I started working on it, or I wasn't ready, and I worked in a not ready space for about a year. I said that really weird, but the whole concept of leaning into and encouraging the readiness is something that I get a lot of questions about. So actually, we totally didn't even talk about taking it this way, but what are the things that you look for when someone, because I get questions all the time is, okay, I think I want to, but I feel a lot of resistance. Like, I don't know if I'm ready. What are the things that you look for to see that someone's ready for the next step? They're ready for the next goal, for the next whatever. Anyway, take it away.
Yeah, you bet. So I totally let them drive the show, right? I ask a lot of, well, what do you think the next best step there is to take, right? What's the next step in the direction that you want to go? I do a lot of visualizing exercises where I have people just go into kind of that meditative heart space and visualize what they want their life to look like in 5 years. And more than what they want it to look like, but what they want it to feel like. And so to really sit into those deep feelings, because many women have never allowed themselves to feel that way, right? Like, oh, I want to feel like true love. I want to feel true peace. I want to feel valued. I want to feel worthy. And usually when they're at the spot where they're talking with one of you and I, they're not feeling those things yet. Maybe they want to, and maybe they're doing all of the things, right? Like they've read all the checklists on Instagram, they're doing all the self-love, but they're not feeling it within themselves. And I think that that's because we jump, right? So we take that visualization exercise, and instead of cutting it way back into like chunks of what is the next thing that I can do right this second, we want to be there tomorrow. And then we get disappointed and we're like, oh, well, I did the things. I did that list. I mean, I watched Karleigh's video. It was great. I did that, and then nothing's changed. I feel the same. Like, we aren't going to notice the difference on a day-to-day level. We just aren't, right? Like sometimes we have those aha moments, but if we're not putting into play the work that it takes to get to the next step, we notice that gradual change over time. Not like, oh, all of a sudden today I'm different. It's more like all of a sudden you wake up and realize I'm different. Like that months of work have gone into that feeling. It's kind of like, that line about overnight success takes 3 to 12 years. It's kind of the same idea, right? Of like, we want it to be an overnight change. We want it to be this thing. Like, if I start doing this, I will never be, in a situation where I let some guy call me a name again. I'll never be gaslighted again. That's not true. Not true at all, right? Like we have to keep taking those baby steps forward. And then we realize over time, we've changed. We've, conquered the next goal. I'm a big fan of goal setting, journaling, of making those like everyday questioning type things, and setting a goal. So when I do like one-on-one coaching with somebody, we talk about the goal for the week. And then, or maybe it's a goal for a month, just depending on where they're at, and really let that be self-led. I think oftentimes too, we try and rush. Like our friend that has no kids or grown kids, or they have plenty of time on their hands, they might grow faster than somebody like me that I was like into survival mode, right? Like it was easy to blame somebody else because I didn't even have time to do any kind of looking inward. I got to have one of those situations right off the bat of like, I'm going to run an errand and then never come home. So here I am with 3 babies, essentially. One of them was a baby, and thrust into survival mode, and then wonder why nothing changed, right? Over those 4 years, I thought I was so healed. How did I think I was so healed? I wasn't doing any healing work. I was just going to work and putting a roof over my kids' heads, which is good and admirable. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I got to do that. But I didn't do any kind of self-reflection. And so it really is all about self-reflection of recognizing what is our role in the life that we've created, because life is all about choices, and we're all living the consequences of choices that we made, whether we made them consciously or not, or whether we knew that this was the set of consequences. And so we can start to change that and create a life that we do want by taking those teeny tiny little baby steps.
Okay, there's so much. The first thing that I need you to stop doing dishes. If you're driving, don't stop in the middle of the freeway. Don't do that. But I need you just listen for a second. She validated the thing that I say all the time is it takes work. You can't buy the workout program and expect to have a 6-pack the next day. You have to put in the mother flipping work, and it takes time. Dear God, it takes time. And people get so pissy with that. Whether you're talking about weight loss or recovery or anything, people don't want to wait. They don't want to. They don't want to put in the work, and they don't want to wait. They think that if they do one day of journaling or one day of affirmations or one day of something, then it's all fixed. This takes time. And the fact that it takes time means you have to give yourself grace, because the more time it takes, the more time you have to slip up. And that's okay, because you're human, but you have to commit to the dang journey. Anyway, little side note, it's like when your mom says something to you over and over and over again, and then 2 weeks later, your best friend says it, and it's like a mind blow moment, and your mom's just like, I just said that. So I want to take this moment. I'm your mama, and your best friend just told you the same dang thing. So do it.
And we do it too, right? Like I burned it all down when I got ready to make changes. Like I burned it all to the ground. And I started to look at that as like, okay, that was fertilizing for all of these seeds that I'm planting. And then I got really pissy. Like I planted all the seeds, I'm doing all the watering, I'm doing all the weeding. Where the heck are these plants? Why are they not popping up? And I threw like a major temper tantrum about that, honestly. That was like 6 months long. It's like, how dare it? How dare I put in all of this work and there's nothing to show for it? So like, we're not immune. We're here talking to you about it because we're in it with you. We get it. Yes, and you give the time, you take a break, you sit on that park bench and you watch. Eventually those seeds will pop up, but you have to keep weeding and watering. Like you can't just pretend like, oh, nothing's there, so I guess it didn't work. No, it's working. We just have to trust the process.
I love that you mentioned your 6-month long temper tantrum, because I feel like a lot of the times we get in this cycle, and it's this guilt cycle where we beat ourselves up because we're not where we want to be. But then we know that we're not supposed to beat ourselves up. So we beat ourselves up for beating ourselves up because we're not where we want to be. But then we know that we're not supposed to. So it ends up in this loop. I mean, honest to God, just last week, I had a complete breakdown. I was crying. I sent probably 45 minutes worth of Snapchat to my best friend, and I was just losing it. I was bawling my eyes out on the floor, literally laying on my office floor. My son was in bed, and I just lost it. I was pissed because it was like, why am I still hitting walls when I've come so far? But the thing to remember is like, a lot of the times we get frustrated and we go, well, now it's back to square one. But it's just like, if you're running a marathon and you trip and fall at mile 4, they're not sending you back at mile 1. You have to get up, you dust yourself up, you put a few band-aids on, and you keep running. And then you fall again at mile 6, and then again at mile 13. You don't have to start over. And so it is totally okay to have those temper tantrums. I would argue that it's totally healthy to have those temper tantrums, because right after I have those moments is like there's a breakthrough right on the other side of it. And there's a whole level up process. I did a Instagram live where I got to get really geeky, and I talked about leveling up and beating the final boss to get to the next level. And it was so much fun, but it's so accurate. Like life is not, unfortunately, life is not a marathon with an end. There's no, like, this healing journey doesn't have a stopping point. It's just a continuous level up. We're still moving. And the way to win is to not give up. Failing doesn't mean you fail. Falling on your face doesn't mean you fail. The only time you fail is when you quit, because you have no chance of winning at that point. And I think that's what, I mean, especially for people like me, where I am so achievement milestone driven, not having a point where I could say, okay, in 6 months, I'm going to be healthier. In 6 months, this isn't going to be an issue. Or 2 weeks from today, I'm going to be ready to date again. Like, there's no point to like put a timeline on it. And that's the most infuriating piece for me.
I love it. It's so true, right? Like, there's not some box of like, oh, sweet, I'm healed now. Like, no, because life will throw something else at you that you'll get to like, oh, maybe I wasn't quite so healed on that one. Thank you for the lessons. Awesome.
Right? And like I had this, I mean, okay, I'm gonna be real. I am far too open on these friggin', as the kids say, I'm way too comfortable here. But like I am at this new place where actually saying it out loud is hard, but I want to actively date and get myself out there. And by the way, this is a skill that I do not have. This has been dormant for years. And I'm actually at a place where I've never dated and been 100% myself. I've never been at this place. And so I have a date tonight, and all day I'm snapping my friend going, talk me out of this. Tell me not to go. Give me a reason to cancel, because all of a sudden all of these like fears come up. And it's frustrating because I could coach somebody through this exact same situation. But when it's me, it's just like, well, I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I can. And we talk ourselves out of the leveling up because we know that it's going to be work and it ain't going to be perfect, which is annoying, but it's life. So the whole reason that I share that is because I never want to come from this place of like, oh, I'm done. It's just like Rebecca said, like, we're still on it with you. We're still on this healing journey. And even in our pre-podcast chat, like we were just riffing on all of these things that we'd gone through, and there's still a little bitterness there. Like there's still anger there. We've come a hell of a long way, but that doesn't mean we're done. That doesn't mean that like we've scaled the mountain and it's just all done now. So,
and that work doesn't have to be hard or like numbing, right? Like I look at it as more like work at a job that you love versus work at a job that you hate, right? I love all of the changes that I'm making in my life. Like, do I always love the work that they take? No, not at all. Of course not. But I love it. I love putting in the work for it. I love stepping back and like deciding. I mean, you mentioned dating. I think I went on like 50 first dates. My kids may have made fun of me. I have teenage girls for going on so many first dates. But like you, I had no idea how to be my total, true, and authentic self on a first date. And to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not interested in you. So I don't have to sit here and like try and pretend what I think you might want because I want you to pick me. I get to choose. Like that was a novel concept, right? Like I always say growing up on Disney and religion, like I didn't realize that was a thing. I thought the guy picked me and I had to be the girl that they wanted. And so, yeah, it was a great 2 years. I had a blast. I'm in a relationship now, so and it's still learning, right? Like it's several months in and he's amazing and wonderful and all the things, but I still have to like practice my old habits that will bubble up, and I'll be like, Rebecca, You don't have to do that here. Or I can be like, okay, what is that trying to teach me? Is there something here that I need to use my voice on? Or is it something that's like an old habit tapping on my shoulder that isn't needed anymore? And I can thank it. You served me well, but I don't need that level of anxiety right here anymore. So it's constant. It is constant.
And something that you said is so powerful, because it's one of the main reasons that I am so scared to get out there. It's, you said that you're allowed to not be interested. Like, that's your choice. You're allowed to say no. It's not all about, oh, I think he's hot. It's, I hope I find him attractive. Like, I hope that it's a good date, because if not, I have the right to say no. And there is this fear in general, not just in dating. It's just a really good example that we are allowed to say that we are uncomfortable, that we don't want to do something, that we can say we want something and then be like, you know what, the more I learn about it, the more I want it, or getting in the middle of getting jiggy with it and you decide that you don't want it. That's 100% within your right. And I, for the longest time, and I thought, well, anyway, that was a really weird way I was gonna say that, but like, I thought for the longest time that I was the only one who felt that way, and that I wasn't allowed to have that thought. Other people could. I would get so upset with my friends when they had that mindset. But for me, I had to take what I could get, which is why I was, that word situationship is the most horrid thing. Dating in your 20s right now is just not fun. But I got stuck in this situationship because I was so convinced that this was my only chance, that I was never going to get another one. And that is something that we as survivors have to learn, and is one of the foundational things to grab onto, that we're allowed to say no, whether it's in relationships, whether it's at work, whether it's with family. Oh my God, setting boundaries with family. That's a whole nother issue.
That's a whole other podcast.
Right? Like, being able to communicate these things and say these things and feeling like it's your right, which it is. It's not a privilege. It's your right. Like, you were born into this world given the right to say no and that you don't want something. And we've been taught throughout our cycle of abusive relationships that we don't matter, that we're not allowed to have boundaries, that if we do have boundaries, we're just gonna be talked right out of them. So we end up not trusting ourselves. And it ends up being this decline, which leads us right into the next one, because we've devalued ourselves to the point where it's like, well, I have to take what I can get because I just don't want to be alone.
And you hit the nail on the head too, right? Of like devaluing we don't trust ourselves. So like, oh, he's into us, so maybe I should trust that. Like, he says, oh, I feel something special. Like, I'm over saying, no, I don't, but he does. So maybe I'm wrong, because we're so used to thinking, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And so giving yourself permission to trust whatever the heck that is, that feeling is, to leave a date if it's uncomfortable. Like, I did that 3 times last year. It was glorious. I'm like, whew, all right, I did it. Or to just cut it short, right? Like, there's no reason to be rude. And when I left, I was usually never rude about it. And so like giving yourself that type of permission, and also letting yourself follow through on the questions, right? Of, what if this is my only chance? What if I never find the one? Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, what if? Some people never do, right? Like, some people do stay single. And is that worse than being in a crappy relationship or an abusive relationship or stuck with a narcissist or any of those other things? It is not worse. We are here to tell you it is not worse. So embrace your single self and build a life you love, that you can attract somebody in that goes with that, if that's your journey. And also let yourself feel the feels that you feel about that, of like, what if I never? And then that opens yourself up, I think, to putting yourself out there in ways that you can just be curious and truly show up as yourself, right? Of like, okay, I asked the questions. I'm interested in asking another one. I'm interested in another date. Just taking it line by line. I saw something the other day of, can't remember what she was talking about, like a beautiful vase or something. And she said, in my mind, it's already broken, right? Like, somebody's already knocked it off the table, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy it today. Right? Like, that I can still fill it with beautiful flowers. I can still love the way the light catches it. I can do all of those things, even knowing that it might break down the road. And I think that's the same thing with dating. Like, 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates, 6 months, it doesn't matter, right? Like, nothing is promised. We are not promised anything. So enjoying in the moment and allowing ourselves to keep living with that curiosity and joy and fun. And when it gets to feel like that job you hate, maybe you do some more self-exploration of figuring out what needs to change, right?
Okay. I didn't come here to be called out like that, but here we are. Just when you, like, I honest to God just had a light bulb moment when you said, okay, just finish it. What if you never find somebody? Like I say all the time, like I would so much rather be single than to be back in that like situation. And it's terrifying, the idea of dating right now, because my standards are so high, and maybe I will end up being alone forever, or maybe I won't find my person until I'm 40, 50 years old, all of these things.
Hey, I'm 41, knock it off.
I say that, but it's just like the fact that, like you say, to just finish it. Like, what if you don't? What then? Because my biggest frustration is wasting time. Like, that's my thing. Like, you could never get this time back. Like, the minute that just passed, we're never going to get that back. That's 1 minute that like I've spent on life. And I have always had this thought of, well, I don't want to date. Dating is work. Dating takes effort. Dating is a part-time job. You cannot convince me otherwise. And so it's like, I don't want to spend all of this time only to have it not work out again, only to have my heart broken, only to waste a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And just, I don't know, the way you said that was so profound, and totally not a coaching session, but you just gave me like a light bulb moment, and I had to acknowledge that. Yeah, I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. Having these guests on selfishly is a way for me to continue to grow. Like I say, it's for you, but really it's for me too. Anyway, so
yeah, that's every part of teaching, right? Like I grow so much with the women that I coach, right? Like they teach me so much, and I get so much from those sessions. And just like you said, like none of it's wasted time. Like, what if we only have one session with somebody that we're working with and we think, oh, well, I mean, they gave up. No, we planted seeds that might bloom later on. Maybe that date didn't work out, but you ended up with a great story to tell your girlfriends. Maybe that relationship didn't work out, but the things that you learned along the way, they're life lessons, right? And none of it is wasted. And so when I talk about going into it with curiosity, I am like straight up front with the guys that I would date. They're like, so what are you looking for? I'm like, this is an experiment. I'm like curious to see, like what happens, with no investment whatsoever. And like practicing putting the brakes on my like anxiety driven self there of, no, you are not investing yet. And so now, like I said, I'm in this relationship, right? And a couple months in, I had to be like, I know you already told me these things, but I wasn't retaining that information because I didn't care. I wasn't ready to invest, and that's totally okay, right? Like I had to be upfront and honest of like, I know you've told me this before. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you remind me? And he was great about it. He's like, well, that makes total sense. But yeah, that investment of just being curious, having fun. Don't make it a job you hate. Make it a job you love. Go to some fun restaurants. Look cute. Flirt.
This was so divinely all put together. Like I needed this before this date tonight. Like I was coming up with 1,000,010 reasons to cancel this dang thing, and now I'm just like, all right, let's go.
No, we're in the same state now, Karleigh. Like restaurants are open. You gotta go.
Yes, and dear God, I need out of my house. My son's with his dad, and I need some adult time away from a computer. I want to pivot slightly and go back to when we were talking about trusting yourself and trusting yourself when it doesn't feel right in your gut. Before, when we were doing our pre-podcast talk, we had started talking about what people think of when they think of an abuser and the reality of it. Like when we think of an abuser, we think of the old fat white dude who's wearing a wife beater that's covered in beer stains, hobbling around, yelling, holding a beer bottle, right? What a lot of the times we don't realize is that the abuser is the most charming, kind looking, sweet person in the room. But because like for me, when I was 17 and that was my first physical abusive relationship, he was, I mean, looking back on it, not all that hot, but my 17-year-old self was so into him. And all of the girls at school were like, oh my gosh, he's so attractive. And I was so caught up on, well, I guess he must not be that bad because everyone else thinks he's hot. And that is something that I got really aggressive there, but that's okay because this is really important. Like, we have to get rid of this mindset that you're going to know an abuser by looking at him, because it's not like it's not like they're going to do something right in front of you. They're not going to look skeezy. They keep that behind closed doors.
Well, and if they did, we wouldn't be with them, right? You know, we would have walked away at the beginning instead of getting invested. And you know what? It's not just unique to 17-year-olds, right? We think, oh, well, I was young and dumb. Nope, I did the exact same thing at 33. You know, here's this great looking guy. Everybody loves him. I am so lucky that he chose me, right? Back to that again. And beat myself up and bent over backwards trying to be all of the things, because you know what? I think that's just as abusive, right? Of like having this ever moving target of, if you're this, then I'll love you again. If you're this, then I wouldn't treat you this way. If you were that, well, you get to there and then it's never there. It just keeps moving. And that is what really messes with your head, right? You just go down this dark, deep shame spiral.
And that shame spiral is the most dangerous place to be, because the longer you are on that spiraling roller coaster, the less you see yourself, and the more that and people don't like it when I say this, but it's how I personally felt. And so it's the words that I use because it's like the best way to say it, is it's because once they know that they've gotten you to that point, they own you. Because if you knew your worth, if you knew that you deserved more, if you truly believed that there was better out there for you, you wouldn't stay. And that's what a lot of people who haven't experienced this don't realize. And when they run their mouth, it makes me so mad. But anyway, staying on focus. It's another part.
Well, and I think sometimes they do it and they don't even realize, right? Like, just like we accept behaviors in our life that we don't realize we're doing, I think that the guys who abuse sometimes are the same way. Yes, there are the nasty ones that are out there just to control, but there's also the ones that, like, they've always gotten their way. So, like, clearly the problem's not them. I'll just flash my dimples and get whatever I want. And, you know, oh, whoops, I'm sorry. Did I say something when I was angry that I didn't mean? Oops. You know, or oops, did I say something that was angry, that when I was angry and it hurt you? That's your problem. Like, I'm this nice guy. Let me flash my dimples at you. And they just never learn that the way they're acting is totally not okay. Totally not okay.
That is such an important point, because, and it was just like the moment you said flash my dimples, I had a whole scenario like pop in my head. One of my exes, that's what it was. Like, I truly don't think he realizes how horrible he is, but he has a mother who has enabled him his entire life, brought him coffee in bed, didn't want him to get a job, was right there with him any single time there was an issue. Mommy was there to fix it. And so that carried over into our relationship. And even though we made the conscious decision that we weren't going to do that, he fell into those old habits. I fell into old habits, and I started feeling that. And he started to have that mindset of, well, my smiles and my dimples have gotten me out of it before, so why don't I just keep going? And the issue with that I have found, and I actually talked to my friend about this the other day, is that we think that because they're not out there trying to be assholes, they're not out there trying to hurt and manipulate people, that we should allow it because they're not toxic. Like, oh, they're not doing it on purpose, so I'm going to be there. I'm going to be the one to fix them, and I'm going to be the one to show him the light, and I'm going to be the one to mother him into the best human on the planet, because I don't want to be the one to break his heart because he's not doing it on purpose.
And I'm uniquely appointed for that job, right? Like, I'm the one that he needed to love him through this, and then we can have the happy ending at the end. Like, I'm the one that he needed. Oh, that's so sweet. We're going to have such a beautiful love story when this is all over and when we're through it. Except for if they're never willing to face it, or if it turns into manipulation, right? Of, like, you say, you know what, when you did this, it made me feel like this. And somehow that turns into them talking about, like, what a horrible person they are, and me apologizing and saying, like, oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Here, what more can I do to make you feel better? Like, wait, hold on, you were the one who hurt me, and now I'm the one apologizing and doing 15 things to try and make amends and try and make things right and convince you that you're not a horrible person. Like, no, most people are not horrible people. We make crappy choices, and we often make them based off of our previous traumas, right? And like, abusers are no different. But that doesn't mean that we have to put up with it. It doesn't mean that we have to accept that in our life. It doesn't mean that undermining and gaslighting and name calling and abuse is okay just because they don't know better. Like, they can learn. We learned, we didn't know better. We put up with it, but then eventually we learned. And nobody's ever going to get better because we tell them to, right? Like, nobody is ever going to be like, oh, you know what, babe, you're right. I was a jerk and I'm so sorry. Like, not when they come from that mentality where they don't even see it in the first place.
I remember, oh my gosh, when you were talking about how like you're trying to communicate that they made you uncomfortable and then it somehow goes back on them. It made me think of this time. I remember when I was 17 in that relationship, and I can't remember what it was that had happened, but I was standing up for myself and I said, hey, this isn't okay. When you did this is fine. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure he did something to make me feel like he cared, which was probably made me feel guilty. But I remember afterwards not knowing what to do. And I was just like, well, is there anything I can do better? Is there anything I can change? And he was so confused. He was like, no, like he didn't. I mean, he is straight up. He was just a horrible person. The more I learned about him and stuff comes up now, there's a warrant out for his arrest. We'll just leave it for that. He's a horrible person. But like, even with him being so horrible, he was so confused as to why I was like, is there anything I can change? Like, I want to contribute too. Like, you're not the only one. I want to fix it. We get into this mindset of that we are always the root of the problem. And that is the root of the problem that we think it. And it's so heartbreaking. And especially the victimization gets me more than anything. When you're trying to be like, hey, when you screamed at me, it made me uncomfortable. And then it's well, I'm just so horrible and I'm the worst boyfriend on the planet, or I'm the worst husband, or I'm the worst dad. And I could just, may as well just leave me because, and then all of a sudden you're feeling guilty, just like you said. And that's one of the worst kinds of manipulation. That's like gaslighting to the extreme, but something that is not talked about enough, which I'm going to make a mental note to like talk about that more. But I would love to ask you, what, in your opinion, is the best way to handle that? Like, what do you say? Because there's no real winning at that point, like from where I can see. So what's the best response?
So a couple things come to mind. Like, first off, I think we do have to talk about this stuff more, right? Because like, the more we speak it out loud, the more we realize how terribly normal it all is, right? Like, how common. And let me be clear that normal does not equal healthy or good.
Yes,
like, it just is super common. And you hear other people's stories and you're like, oh my gosh, is there a playbook somewhere? Like, those were the same words. What the heck? So I will say I've handled it a couple of different ways because I have started and stopped this healing journey a few times. So in my first marriage, I realized the man had a problem with the truth. Like, he was abusive, yes, but like, the bigger issue in that one was that he could not tell the truth to save his life. Like, the sky is blue and he would tell you it was green, and you'd somehow believe him. It was the craziest thing I have ever experienced. And so at that point in my life, I was 28. I had 3 kids. One of them was a new baby. I decided I'm going to accept this. Like, the man is never going to tell me the truth about anything. So like, how can I figure out how to be happy in this world anyways? And I was never going to leave that marriage. I wasn't in a place where I even thought that was an option. Like, what a concept. And so I did. Like, I spent like about 6 months living in that space of just understanding that he was a liar. And part of that, I think, was self-preservation, because if I didn't call him out on the line, then he wasn't abusive to me, right? So it's like, that's not less abusive. It's quite effective. And then the second healing journey around, I think I learned the technique of the gray rock technique, of talking with narcissists, where you just respond as if you're a gray rock, essentially. And so whatever it is they say, you just say, okay, all right. Like, I was so tired of arguing. And I'm the type of person that I can see multiple perspectives, right? Like, I see the whole freaking big picture. I can understand how, if you're standing on the other side of that mountain, you see it differently than I do. We live in Washington. We know that, right?
Yep.
These mountains all look different depending on where you're standing.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get that. Totally get that. But when you're talking with somebody who does not, who refuses to acknowledge that it could look different from a different side, there's just nothing you can do. You can explain different perspectives all day long, but if they're just never willing to ever see anything other than their own view, there's really no other option than to just say, okay. And, or, oh, because okay sounds like agreement, right? So, oh, interesting. and when I started doing that, oh my gosh, it pissed him off so much. So things definitely did not get better in that regard, and I ultimately left. not too long after that, but I definitely started that healing journey a couple of years before I actually left the house. But yeah, because that's really all you can do is just say, oh, there's no other response that works for them. There just isn't. And that's unfortunate, right? Because they don't get to grow either. They don't get to learn, like, oh, you know what? If I stand on this part of the state, Mount St. Helens looks different than if I'm standing over here. It's the same mountain, but boy, does it look different. And if you're not willing to take that little moment and put that into practice of, like, let's climb this together. Let's find some medium ground here where we can meet up and do this together. We're on the same team. Like, stop fighting me. There's nothing you can do except for build better boundaries and walk away. Like, and that's unfortunate, but it's reality, because we have to love ourselves enough to say we've done all we can. Or if it's early on in a relationship, you don't have to do all you can, right? Like, it's okay to just be like, peace, this is not working for me, right? Like, there is no obligation to another human. There just isn't. 3 dates in, 3 months in, I don't care. You can end things for whatever you want. There's that meme that I see go around all the time, right? Of like, previous relationship ignores all these red flags. Next time, I don't like the way you type.
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm sure that means a lot.
True, right? It's totally true. And I said earlier that I went on like 50 first dates, right? Like, there was no like particular reason why I didn't go out with some of those guys again. They were all great. Most of them were great men. But I just was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to. Like, I don't want to is a valid reason, because maybe you're inside, maybe your unconscious is telling you, like, this would be miserable. Like, don't even prolong it with a second date or a second drink or whatever that the case might be, and that's okay. And then once you are in those relationships, children are involved, maybe you're married, maybe it is yours, and you have put in the effort to change things, and there's no movement. Like, you have to walk away, because you deserve to thrive. You deserve to be out from under that kind of thumb. You deserve to be free, to be who you are, right? If you're with somebody who is constantly putting you down for who you are, well, why the heck are you with me? Like, you don't even like me, so why are you here? And I am never going to be all of these things that you want me to be. I tried. I practically killed myself trying to be all of those things, right? And so to be able to be free and to thrive, and to understand that, like, getting divorced is not the end of the world, is not, and even getting divorced twice, like, oh my gosh, it's okay. And the more I talk about it too, the more I hear from other women who are like, I've also been divorced twice, or I've been divorced 3 times. Thank you for saying that out loud, that, like, you can still live a good life and be a good person and learn. Like, maybe it was you the first couple of times, but you can still learn and grow. You don't have to put all of that blame on another human either. Like, you're not a victim. we can own our life choices and own where we've been and still grow and flourish and thrive and be free.
Not enough people are saying that. That is so powerful. We have a choice. You're not a victim. Like, you can change that. If there is nothing else, if there's no other message, if this is the only episode you listen to, I want you to take that away. And if it pisses you off, then you're on the right track. I remember like hitting that realization, and I was so mad. It was actually, and I've shared this story before, I'm not going to go like too deep into it, but I was reading the book High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard, and that's the book that completely changed my life. And the first chapter of that book is entitled Bring the Joy, and he talks about how joy is a choice. I was so mad. I was sitting in my car under a Safeway light at like 8 o'clock at night waiting for a Grubhub order, and I threw that book so hard it slammed against the side of my door. A lady putting her groceries away snapped her head over, asked, like, trying to wonder what was going on. I was so pissed. So if you are pissed, you're on the right track. Don't turn it off. Don't stop listening. You're allowed to get mad. Get mad and then let it sink in. Because I didn't want, it's not fun to hear that it's your, like that you have the choice. But the reason why it makes you mad is because you thought for so long that life happened to you and you just had to take it. Because you were taught, whether it was by family, whether it was by a skeezy babysitter, whether it was however it happened, we were taught that we have to take what life gives us, which is generally not even scraps. It's just dirt. And we take that as gospel. And that's just not true. And that,
so and that we're stuck, right? Like, how many times have we been told, well, you made your bed? Like, well, that doesn't mean I have to lie in it. Actually, like, I can get the heck up out of it. And that's why it pisses us off. Like, I can't tell you how many books I threw across the room, Karleigh. Oh my gosh. Where I'd be like, you know what, this is going to take me a year to read because I can only do a paragraph at a time because, oh my gosh, this is like calling me out in every paragraph. And realizing, like, I'm not stuck. Like, even though I'm married, even though kids are involved, like, I'm not stuck. I have choices. I have different ways I can handle it. And I am not telling anybody to leave, like, right? Like, we're not here to tell you to leave your relationships. But like, if that's what you need to do, it's okay. It is okay. And you can thrive and you are not doomed. You are not doomed.
And right along with that, one of the biggest realizations that I had, and I've used this, I do really well with like visual thinking, but it's just like, I thought for the longest time that my power was taken from me and I had to fight to get it back. But what I didn't realize is that it wasn't taken from me. It was pushed over in the corner. And I was then told it wasn't there. I was told it wasn't for me. And I believed it. And I continued to believe it. And anytime I saw it out of the corner of my eye and I began to look that way, it was, nope, it's not yours. Nope, you're worthless. Nope. Do you believe that anyone else is going to put up with you? Are you sure? Like, seriously? Or you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. No one else is going to want you. Do you imagine how much work it is? And every time you see that power, you're pulled right back to go, no, it's not for me. I don't deserve that. But once you realize that the power was never taken from you, it's just sitting over there in the corner waiting for you to pick it up, everything changes. And you're allowed to be pissed that you look over and see it there the whole time. Like, you're allowed to be mad that it's there, and that you are allowed to be upset with yourself. You're allowed to be upset with anyone. Like, you're allowed to feel those things. Get mad, stay pissed for however long, but just make sure there's a point where you pick that power up and you start running with it. And it's going to take time, and it's heavy, and it's going to feel awkward, and you're not going to want it sometimes, and you're going to put it back down. But again, you're not starting at mile 1. You fall at mile 2, you're going to pick that power back up and keep going. And once I had that realization, I was mad for a long time. But once it hit me, it was like, I never lost it. It was just tucked over in the corner, and I was convinced it wasn't there. And that I don't know. I think I had that realization maybe early last year, and it just shifted everything in such a powerful way.
Absolutely. Like, letting go of all of those layers that we put on ourselves, of all the shoulds, all the ways we should look, all of the things that, you know, in direct. Oh my gosh. I remember actually one time I wrote a list of all of the things that I had been called. I wrote it in my phone. all of those things you just mentioned, right? Like all of the, you're always going to be alone. Like, do you know what I put up with? Like, you're manipulative. All of the words you can think of. And I wrote them all down, all these words that I've been called. And I made a second column where I put the positive version of that. You know what? I am manipulative. Like, damn me for trying to like manipulate you into seeing a different perspective so that we can put our family back together. Like, that was horrible. I mean, I can see that was just really such a terrible thing, because we all are, right? Like, we all are bitchy sometimes. We all are manipulative sometimes. And when we can own those words, then they stop having power over us anymore. Same with the fear, like we talked about earlier. Maybe I will be alone. Maybe no one else will ever love me again. That's okay, because I love me, and that's new. That took me 38 years to learn how to love myself, and you can't take that from me anymore, right? Like, I know my worth. I know that it is okay to be all of the weird, crazy, wonderful things that are me, and I'm okay with that. Like, it's okay to not be everybody's flavor. I don't have to people please myself into making you comfortable, because guess what? That just might not mean that I'm for you then. Like, sorry. It's okay.
I got chills. I honest to God got chills when you said, I love myself and you can't take that from me anymore. Like, if that's not the best way to like round out a podcast, I don't know what is. That's just a mic drop moment. Don't drop your mic though. But that is everything you say, and you have such an eloquent way of saying things and having it come out in a mind-blowing, soul-piercing way in such a good way. I feel like it sounded like an insult. It definitely wasn't. It was
no, that was beautiful. Actually, I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Like, such a beautiful compliment. Thank you.
Well, I
think I'm all over the place.
Like, I feel like I just got a masterclass. Like, honest to God, like, I'm just sitting here and I'm having moment after moment after moment. I'm gonna like take a journal with me and sit down with this dude at the table tonight and be like, here you go. Here's your thing. Let's go down the list. Cause just so you know, like, I am so ready. But okay, before I end up going on a rant and bugging you more with how I can survive this mother-loving date tonight, where can everyone find you on social media? How can they connect with you? How can they work with you? Because we all need you.
You're so sweet. So you can find me on Instagram, Wild Radiant Love, because you all need to be wild and connected with your own inner self and love and be radiant. So Wild Radiant Love on Instagram, Facebook. It's also wildradiantlove.com. DM me, message me. Happy to work with you. I'm just doing private clients right now, but I have some other group things and self-paced on the burner coming out soon. So follow me, and then you can be first up when those launch. I do have a couple of spots open if you are interested in private coaching. I have a couple spots right now that I can squeeze you on in. I'd be happy to. Totally passionate about helping you live that best life. And Karleigh, on that date tonight, just have fun. Don't talk about your trauma. You don't need any more trauma bonding. It's like the thing to do on first dates, and like, just knock that out. Have fun.
Yes, I am. My friend's gonna be so excited because she's been pushing me. She's been saying the same thing. She's gonna be really annoyed that like it took you saying it for me to have that moment. But I'm so grateful, and I'm so excited. I'm still terrified, but I'm excited. I'm adding the excitement in there, and that is 100% because of your time. And I'm so grateful for that. I will make sure I have all the links in the show notes. Connect with her, check out the show notes, check out the transcript on the blog. Everything is going to be there. You won't regret it. Go check her out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I am so grateful to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Karleigh. This was amazing.